Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling defeated, even after saying everything you thought you needed to say? That hollow sense of having lost something, not because you lacked arguments, but because your voice felt drowned out? Maybe you felt that tight knot in your throat, a subtle ache that grows with every word exchanged. It's the feeling of being disconnected from your own strength, as if each sentence spoken took you further away from your center. Perhaps you often find yourself surrounded by dominant voices, people who interrupt, belittle, or speak with the confidence of thunder but the depth of an echo. In that environment, silence can seem like surrender. We're conditioned to think that not defending ourselves is weakness, that staying quiet means admitting defeat. But what if that belief is completely false? What if real strength has never been about the noise we make, but the restraint we show? Some of the most misunderstood minds in history, like Nietzsche, perceive something most people refuse to acknowledge. Those who talk endlessly reveal their vulnerabilities without realizing it. The constant need to explain or convince is not power. It's insecurity dressed up as confidence. We are taught from early on that every disagreement must be confronted, that every idea must be defended, as if truth itself depended on our ability to argue. But nature and philosophy offer a different path. A quieter one. A deadlier one. Silence is not just the lack of speech. It is a force, a presence so powerful it unsettles and exposes. True strength lies in the ability to observe without reacting, to hold your position without needing applause. If you've ever felt ignored, dismissed, or unheard, this message is for you. If you've ever tried to keep peace while others took advantage of your calm, it's time to rethink your silence. It's not submission, it's untapped power. And today, you'll begin to understand how that power works. We feel an almost compulsive urge to respond, to clarify, to set the record straight. Why? Because we've been programmed to believe that silence means defeat, that if we don't speak up, we allow falsehoods to win. But this compulsion is rooted in fear, not strength. It stems from the ego, the fragile part of us that confuses disagreement with personal attack. The ego panics when questioned, seeing every conversation as a battlefield. But arguments, as Nietzsche once implied, are rarely about truth. They're about control. Most people don't debate to uncover wisdom. They argue to maintain power, to shield themselves from the collapse that might follow if their ideas were truly challenged. When you feel compelled to justify yourself, you've already lost. You've entered their arena. You've made their validation more important than your peace. This is what Nietzsche called herd morality, the behavioral code of those who live by the expectations of others. They want to be liked, seen as just and correct, even if it means betraying their own instincts. But in this desperate pursuit of acceptance, they become weak. True strength, Nietzsche insisted, is found not in convincing others, but in being unmoved when others doubt you. It's in your capacity to remain still while others clamor for your reaction. It's in being misunderstood and choosing not to flinch. The real victory is not in dominating a discussion, but in realizing you don't need to take part in it. Once you understand this, you begin to see conversation for what it often is: theater. And in that theater, the first to act is already vulnerable. The one who observes holds the real power. So, how do we influence others without reacting? How do we make our presence felt without speaking a word? Nietzsche pointed to a figure that embodied this level of mastery: the Übermensch, the one who transcends common morality and becomes a force of nature, not by domination, but by total self-possession. The Übermensch doesn't rely on persuasion. He doesn't enter petty arguments or indulge emotional baiting. He watches. He chooses silence not because he lacks a response, but because he no longer needs one. His restraint speaks louder than the loudest voices. His silence is not void, it's presence. It is threat. It is control. It's a quiet, undeniable command that forces others into a state of psychological disarray. When you can remain composed while others unravel, when your stillness causes others to falter, you've entered a realm of power few dare to claim. This kind of silence unsettles people deeply. Why does silence feel so threatening to others? Because it breaks the expected pattern. When someone doesn't respond, the human brain searches desperately for meaning. The mind, conditioned to seek control through dialogue, begins to panic in the absence of feedback. Psychologically, silence is perceived as judgment, even when it's simply presence. Without a reply, people are forced to sit with their own words, their own uncertainty. They begin projecting their fears onto you. Are they judging me? Did I say something wrong? Do they see through me? This spiral of doubt is the beginning of their unraveling. Silence becomes a mirror, and most people cannot bear their own reflection. Modern psychology confirms what Nietzsche intuitively understood. Silence in confrontation triggers emotional alarm. The amygdala activates, anxiety rises, and insecurities surface. Manipulators especially hate silence. They thrive on emotional reactions. They need your response to validate their control. When you don't react, they're thrown off balance. Their tactics lose power. Their masks begin to slip. And beyond that, silence activates deeper emotional wounds: rejection, humiliation, abandonment. It reminds people that they are not the center, that their words may not matter as much as they thought. That kind of realization is unbearable to the ego. And so, your silence becomes not just protection, but an invisible blade, cutting through illusion with devastating precision. But make no mistake, silence is not easy. It's not passive. It demands discipline. It goes against everything we've been taught: to defend, to explain, to justify. That's what makes it powerful. Mastery of silence is mastery of self. And when you achieve that, you no longer play the game of control, you define its terms. From this point forward, the challenge is no longer understanding the power of silence. It's wielding it intentionally, strategically, not as a shield, but as a blade. Your first test will be this: remain silent when your instinct screams to speak. That is the beginning of transformation. Because from now on, your silence will not be the absence of a voice, it will be the loudest voice in the room. There is a deep and subtle poison that seeps into the soul each time you feel the need to prove you're right. That craving for validation is not strength, it's surrender. Every time you seek to justify yourself, you hand over power to others. You show that their opinions still shape your actions, that you remain trapped in their expectations, still dancing to their tune. True silence, the kind that reshapes the world, only arises when this need is destroyed, when you understand that truth doesn't require an audience to be real, and you owe no one an explanation. It is in this detachment that real inner freedom begins. The first weapon of true silence is observation. While others rush to fill the air with noise, explanations, and defenses, you stay quiet, not with passive ears, but with the sharp awareness of a predator. You don't listen to respond, you listen to see. You pick up the tremors beneath their words, the fear hidden in bravado, the contradictions that betray uncertainty, the arrogance that masks fragility. You collect all of it. And if you choose to speak, it will be precise, deliberate, piercing. You will speak not to be heard, but to transform. That's the power of knowing the emotional terrain better than those who wander blindly across it. The second weapon is time. Learn the strength of enduring silence. A pause, extended just beyond comfort, becomes a force in itself. It creates tension, and tension wields power. While the other waits for your reply and it doesn't come, their mind begins to spiral. They fill the void with doubts, assumptions, and insecurities. Your stillness becomes their unraveling. A glance without a word, held at the right moment, can crush more effectively than a flood of perfect arguments. This is not the silence of avoidance. It is strategic, controlled, and deeply alive. Then there is unpredictability. When you master silence, you become unreadable. And that alone is terrifying to others. People fear what they cannot predict because unpredictability strips them of control. It forces them to tread carefully, to measure every word, every move. You reverse the dynamic. Where once you reacted to others, now they orbit around you. You become the silent center of gravity in every room you enter. Silence ceases to be absence and becomes dominance. But don't mistake this power for passivity. This silence is not empty or weak, it is heavy with purpose. You are not withholding, you are preparing. You are not frozen, you are poised. There is a quiet strength in knowing you could speak and end it all, but choosing not to, yet. However, silence is not always power. Sometimes it becomes a prison. There are moments when silence isn't strategy, it's survival. You are not standing still with control. You are frozen by fear, drained by manipulation, exploited by those who understand you will never resist. In these cases, silence is not noble, it is submission. A slow surrender of identity and autonomy. The most insidious part? You may not even see it happening. You believe you're keeping the peace, when in reality, you're being conquered, bit by bit, without a single raised voice. And so we arrive at a darker truth. The silence taught to us as maturity, as balance, can often be a trap. Swallowing anger, avoiding confrontation, letting others decide for you, this isn't always wisdom. Sometimes it's just self-erasure dressed in politeness. And the world is full of people who will take advantage of that. They will occupy your space, speak over your voice, and reshape your life, while you smile and say, "It's not worth the fight." But the truth is, it is worth the fight. You are paying for peace with your own power, and those who understand this will continue to take, knowing you will never push back. This is what the ancient thinkers called the morality of slaves. A belief system built not by the strong, but by the broken, to justify their own submission. It teaches you that to shrink is to be noble, to yield is to be kind, and to vanish is to be good. But this is not virtue. This is self-denial. Nature never honored those who merely survived. It respected those who transcended. Those who tore off the masks and faced the world as they were, even if it hurt. The silence that matters, the silence that commands, is not afraid, not apologetic, not small. It stands tall. It interrupts without speaking. It is a presence that bends the room. So how do you evolve from a voice that's been silenced into a presence that commands? How do you abandon the morality that told you to accept and step into one that teaches you to stand? The answer lies in the embodiment of what Nietzsche called the Übermensch. Not a louder man, but a deeper one. A human who has mastered himself so thoroughly that his silence echoes louder than the noise of the world. This is not about domination of others. It's about reclamation of self. Now look at your life. How many times have you been silent out of fear? Out of guilt? Out of the belief that keeping quiet meant keeping peace? How many decisions were made for you? How many truths were ignored? How many opportunities were lost because you believed silence was strength, when in reality, it was submission? That must end. Today, your silence must change its meaning. No longer a retreat. No longer a cage. It must become an unspoken declaration of who you are. A boundary. A command. A fire that doesn't burn out loud, but still scorches. And even if no one understands you, even if the world misreads your silence, it does not matter. You do not exist to be understood. You exist to be. That alone is enough. That alone takes courage. And now I ask you, do you have that courage? If so, then say it, mean it, and live it. Write it not for me, but for yourself. I choose the silence that commands respect. Because even silence, when aligned with truth, becomes the loudest voice in the room.